right, the meeting will come to order. Welcome, everyone. This is a regular business meeting of the Riverside District 96 Board of Education. Margie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Brockway? Ms. Kleiber?
Here.
Ms. Mangia?
Here.
Mrs. Morello?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Regan?
Present.
Thanks, Margie. At this time, we have public comments. So first public comment, and if you haven't signed the list, you can come up anyway, but there's a list here. But the first person on the list is Katie Gregory. So if you could speak at the microphone and just state your name and your address, we appreciate that.
Hello, my name is Katie Gregory, and I live at 180 South Cove here in Riverside. Thank you very much for this opportunity to comment at tonight's meeting. As a parent of a current Ames first grader, I respectfully urge the board to approve the superintendent's request for a third second grade section at Ames for the coming school year. Like many Ames parents, I was disappointed and frustrated with the board's decision to allow class sizes of 25 for first grade last fall. While class size may not be the most important determinant of student success, I believe it can have a significant impact on a student's educational experience. Ames first grade classes currently stand at 25, well above the district's aim of 20 students for kindergarten through third grade. While future renovations and additions may be a possibility with the recent acquisition of the house at 92 Repton Road and the long-awaited facilities plan, the property does not hold the solution for the 2017-2018 school year, and realistically may not hold the solution for 2018-19 either. Many families, including my own, chose Riverside due in part to its high-quality schools. The district's stated commitment to small class sizes was also a factor. I understand that Riverside is a mature and fully developed community, and with that, enrollment will fluctuate from year to year and decade to decade. However, I believe that all students in District 96 deserve small class sizes, not just those enrolled during times of low enrollment, even if it means finding creative solutions and employing strategies that have not been used in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other Ames parents who'd like to speak on this issue? You're welcome to. Another person? Oh, is Wendy Doctor here? If you could just state your name and your address.
Sure. Wendy Doctor, and my address is 186 Aiken-side.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to repeat anything that the Ames parents are saying, but I'm also a parent of a first grader at Central. And the Central parents are also concerned about rising class sizes as well. And I'm kind of just starting to learn all the facts on this. So I just started a couple weeks ago on this. So I'm learning as far as how we got here and where we might be going. But it seems that a couple years ago, decisions that were made to help alleviate rising enrollment at Ames is now dominoing and starting to affect enrollment at Central, and possibly it looks like at Blythe as well. And so I don't know how to stop it, and I guess that's what we're all here to decide together, and hopefully we can come up with a good solution. But I am here to just let you guys know that we are concerned as parents at Central in the first grade. I was able to meet with the superintendent and Mr. Gatz, the principal at Central, on Monday, and I learned a couple things that I did not know then, and since then I've been thinking about this. One of the things that I learned was that we have 14 students at Central that would have gone to Ames had there not been enrollment issues at Ames and come 2 years ago at kindergarten. About half of those I know personally, and I know that they plan on staying at Central, and so an extra classroom at Ames isn't necessarily going to alleviate the Central issue that I see maybe possibly coming this next year. I also learned, surprisingly enough, and I think all of us in the room on Monday were surprised, that it seems that the highest enrollment of transfer students in the grade school comes going into second grade and going into fifth grade, which I was surprised. I would have thought it would have been first grade and fifth grade. But it's second grade and fifth grade. And why that is, I don't know. I threw out a guess of maybe it's the third child coming in and they have to move to a bigger house or another community for a third child, but it's the second grade and the fifth grade. So if we go by that historically, we might be in trouble at Central come August or even July or August because right now we're at now 23 each class. And we started the class, Mr. Getz said we started, and I looked at the class enrollment, we started at 17 to 19 in each of our classes at the beginning of the year, and we're now at 23. And so if we get a big influx, which it seems like historically we do, coming into this next school year, we're gonna be at or above 25 come the beginning of September. And I, for one, would like to be proactive and avoid having to go find a teacher come August when the pool is lower of high qualified teachers in August, and/or having to face having a parapro, or moving kids that should be now in Central to Ames because there's room at Ames, and now we get into a big Central boundary schools, kids are at Ames boundary schools are at Central, and then because of siblings, it could last another decade. And so I think we're at some point we need to put our finger in the dam and stop it. And I think by doing that, the solution is to deal with the issue at the particular school rather than shuffling kids around to different schools. So I'm hoping that we can start looking at the central issue proactively and not wait until it gets to the 25, which I think it looks like it probably will in August. So.
Thanks very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Do we have any other parents that would like to speak on this topic? If you could state your name and your address.
My name is Gina Bennis. I'm at 2511 Hainsworth in North Riverside. My oldest now is actually in 6th grade here, but every time he's been at Ames since 2nd grade. There's always been 3 classrooms. But we're used to that. That's the common thing for us now. I've got a kindergartner who will be going into 1st grade. I know right now there's only 2 first grade teachers, so I know we will need to add 1. But where you're going to put that, I don't know, because my middle one was in the same classroom in kindergarten and also in 1st grade. But what are we going to do? Because a lot of people are moving to Riverside and North Riverside because of the excellent schools. We're just going to have to figure out where we're going to have to add more classrooms, and because I know a lot of people are going to Blythe because of the way the borders are. So, but we love Ames and we love Hauser, but that's why we moved. So, that's my.
Thank you for your comments.
No problem. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? If not, then I think next up is Mr. Pat, who was one of our two interim superintendents last.
One of those guys, anyway. The only reason for taking Patrick Pat, I live in the Northland. I did about a 40-mile ride to get here. And I'm going to be leaving. I'm not on the clock, Mary Rose. I know you'd worry about that, whether I was being paid to travel. My real reason for being here is to say thank you to Rachel and Mary Rose, and unfortunately Randy's not sitting in his seat right now. I was on a school board when my kids were young for 4 years, and you're faced with a lot of tough decisions. Demographics, and that's what I was listening to with the last 3 speakers, are very difficult to predict. If there was a demographer out there that could tell you exactly how many kids would be at each grade level in each school every year, that person would be worth a fortune. And so you really have to shift back and forth. These 3 people, Rachel, Mary Rose, and Randy, 4 years ago had probably very different sets of problems. It's nice to hear that it's really just trying to solve some instructional class size problems as opposed to what existed back 4 years ago. So they should walk away feeling very good that this district is in a much better place than it was. Jeff, I want to congratulate you on your victory, that the community realized that your leadership was a very positive thing for the school district. And I would tell the 3 parents that spoke, you are in the best hands you possibly could be in. Identifying Martha as the superintendent, this lady, Meryl, who's hiding over here in the corner, as the curriculum person, and the rest of your leadership team here are probably some of the best group of people I've ever seen, from the central office people, down to the principals of each of the buildings. And so just work with them, trust that they're doing the best they can given the circumstances. Sometimes some of the solutions aren't always the best as you see them, but realize they're doing everything they can to make it work. That's why they bought the house next to Ames. And yeah, it's going to be a while for that to come to fruition, but that was one of those very proactive things that will help in the future for any enrollment changes as time goes on. So, you know, I get to walk out the door now. I don't have to stay for this meeting because I'm not on the clock. But again, thank you to Rachel, Mary Rose, and Randy for their 4 years. And, you know, your Board of Education with the newly elected people, combined with the administrative staff and the faculty in this district, you are very blessed. At last year's graduation, I said these were the nicest kids I've ever worked with. And I can say that again, I really mean that. And I've been in a lot of places. I'm very old. I've been in a lot of districts over time. So you've got a long agenda, I'll let you get going, and I get to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Pat. And we really didn't pay him to say that. So.
I don't want to say it.
Are there any other public comments at this time? If not, we move on to changes to the agenda. Since we have a number of people here who are interested in the Ames enrollment, I would propose that we move that voting item up to right after the superintendent's report, if that's okay with the rest of the board, so we can get that out of the way. Is that okay? Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is a public hearing. At this time, is there a motion to hold a public hearing on the resolution to waive a limitation of administrative cost?
So moved.
Second.
So are there any comments about this topic in the public hearing? If there are no comments on this, then is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Do we have to roll call vote on that, or we have to roll call the vote to go into it too? Or we forgot about that too.
So Mary Rose made the motion to go into.
Why don't we vote on that? Go through that. Sorry about that.
Mrs. Morello. Aye. Ms. Mangia.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Aye.
Ms. Fiber.
Aye.
Mr. Brockway.
Could you recap?
We're going to a public hearing motion for the waive the limitation on administrative cost.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy. Aye. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
So now that we are officially in the public hearing, are there any comments on this topic? Okay. If there are no comments on the topic, is there a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Margie, please call the roll.
Mr. Regan.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy. Aye. Mrs. Morello. Aye. Mr. Brockway.
Aye.
Ms. Mangia.
Aye.
Ms. Fiber.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Okay, thanks. I know Meryl is hiding around the corner, I think Lauren Allen, right? And we have our some award winners from our Brookfield Zoo Science Fair, and they are going to share a little bit with you tonight, so welcome.
So, as a district, we participated in the West Suburban Consortium of Academic Excellence's Science Fair, and we participate with all the districts that are part of the West Suburban Consortium. And so these guys are winners. They participated in our 5th and 6th grade science club that we hosted here at Hauser this year for the first time. And they had to take part in a district showcase where students from Triton and a professor from Triton came over from the chemistry department and acted as our judges for our district showcase, and they had to showcase their projects. And then from that experience, we moved students forward to the Brookfield Zoo opportunity. And these guys had to be there with really, 5th grade is the bottom rung sort of the ladder in the science fair at the zoo, and it goes all the way through 8th grade. So these projects, particularly the 6th grade project, was judged not particularly at a grade level, but of all the projects. And Max Makoto here won 3rd place for the 5th graders. Come up and share first a little bit about his project, and then Daniel and Michael, who are waiting in the wings, they won the Future Scientist Award, and this is the 2nd year in a row that District 96 took that award home. Sophie Fiber, and Mrs. Allen was one of their sponsors, so we're very grateful for her.
And I just want to say that this guy at first wanted to cure cancer.
Oh.
And part of this program, and I want to thank the board for this program, was that the inquiry and the talking that we had, and you know, like, not just giving them the answers, but letting them find the answers. The 10 weeks was amazing, and a lot of I just want you to know how hard these students worked, and the process of watching their brains going was just amazing. And I love parents, but sometimes parents will say, oh, that won't work. So our turbine guy, he took 4 times before he found a blade, because he kept wanting me to tell him. And I'm like, no. And then we finished at the very end. So I just want to thank the board for that opportunity, and it was a really success. So he's going to cure cancer in 8th grade.
That's right.
So I just wanted to check. Okay, all right, let me be your easel.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you this so it's easier, and you can also, he's got a little video too that he's going to share.
I don't know what to say.
Tell them a little bit about your project.
Well, at first I wanted to do like if I could make electricity like big turbines except like make them smaller like the turbine guy, and then I kind of went off in my own direction trying to cure cancer, and then they said it was too expensive.
Couldn't find a cancer cell. That was the big deal.
So I went over to burning something because I wanted to, and I knew that hand sanitizer would burn, but I didn't know if it would still kill bacteria after it was burned. So that's what I did research on. I experimented on it, and at the District 96 judges from the Triton, I was nervous for the first 2 judges that came over, but the third one I kind of had it, and he said I had a good oral presentation, and at the zoo, when I did the science fair, all the judges in their written response said that I had a good oral presentation as well, and so I was happy of that. And they also gave some tips, like I should look at the judges more instead of my script. And so I tried doing that for the 3rd judge, and it worked out really well. And yeah, I took my mom and I took a bunch of pictures of the process. So I guess. Yeah.
It'll kill her while this wakes up.
So does it kill bacteria?
Yeah.
Very little.
Very little.
How did you count the bacteria and how much?
I did 5 milliliters, and I burned that, and then I put in 5 milliliters of unburned hand sanitizer, and I used teeth bacteria, so it didn't work very well.
everything. That was great.
Do you have any questions?
Did you make your own auger or did you buy them?
I
Oh,
bought
good.
it. My dad bought it on Amazon.
So they were really beautiful and clean. Great.
Oh yeah, the bacteria smelled horrible.
Yeah.
I didn't taste it.
How long did you let them grow for?
About 3 days. Some of them dried out because the lid wasn't on tight.
So your conclusion was that when you burned the sanitizer, then it no longer was effective. Was that the conclusion, or was that? Or,
Yeah.
Okay. So there's
Next
something in the liquid that somehow was burned off. That,
Yeah, probably the alcohol.
okay.
In the future, I'm going to do like hand bacteria, not teeth bacteria, and maybe use more hand sanitizer and possibly use one that has 0% ethyl alcohol.
Well, I went to this showcase that they had and I was just so impressed. You know, isolating a variable is not an easy thing to do, even as a grown-up, and I was really impressed with all of you and your careful procedure. So I appreciate that you learned things, and I'm so proud of them. They have to defend verbally in front of strangers at the zoo in a giant room packed with boards. And I'm so proud of you guys for it.
Thank you.
And I have to say, I agree, your presentation was fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you as well.
Good job. Very good job. Thanks very
Really
much.
fun for grown-ups to get to work with kids like this. So these two gentlemen were awarded the Future Scientist Award, which is a really big deal. BP sponsored it, and so the BP employees that were part of the science fair process were the ones who got to determine which project would be awarded the Future Scientist Award. So I'm going to turn it over to Daniel and Michael.
My name is Michael Talpin and I'm in the 6th grade.
My name is Daniel Bennis and I'm in 6th grade. For our project, we were trying to find the energy values of different fuels.
We did the whole experiment with a setup that we made, and that setup I don't think will last for a long time anymore because it was used a lot. We did it mainly in my house, backyard. So, and the most interesting part was the math. It's a lot of it, but
Okay, now you can come over. Okay, come on closer. We can hear you.
Well, for me, I think the hardest part was converting it because we didn't notice that on the thermometer we used, we could convert it from Fahrenheit to Celsius on the back, so we had to do that.
Good.
Instead of having it already converted.
for me the hardest part was probably the cleaning up.
So how did you proceed? How did you try to figure out what the energy value was? What was your?
We created a setup that consisted of an old charcoal starter and tinfoil and a pot that we modified that we got for $1, and we would put the then we put fuels under it, and then we lit them up, and we would see how fast and the water would heat up and by how much, and how much water would boil out and how much water would not. So, and then we converted it into the amount of energy that was converted.
So you made like a calorimeter, right? Yeah.
What was the most challenging part when the judges came to observe your project?
The most challenging part when the judges came, I think, had to be maybe the presentation because they lasted like half an hour to an hour.
It's a long time.
They had a lot of questions.
So what was your hypothesis on this question? Did you?
Our hypothesis is that we hypothesized that different fuels will release different amount of energy upon burning. We think heat and water using different fuels will give us the energy stored in wood, coal, cardboard, paper, candles, and gasoline.
First, we found out that gasoline, candles, according to our results, had the highest energy since they are made out of similar material as gasoline. But we made a mistake in our conversions because we Googled it and checked how much gasoline is actually, and we were 2.7 times smaller than what the actual value was. So close.
Well, doing your backyard is not perfect control. That's all right.
Yes.
That's all right.
Well, at least you checked your results though, and
That's right.
what you did, you were pretty good.
That's right.
That's interesting.
And for us, I would say, for me, at competition, the hardest part was probably all the questions that the judges asked, and they would be all at different times. Like, let's say you're talking about data analysis, and they're still thinking about the experimental setup. But overall, the questions were pretty hard and very interesting.
Obviously, answer them.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Looks like a great experiment.
So just as Mrs. Allen said, thank you again for helping us to sponsor these kinds of activities for our students. We're hoping to possibly expand this opportunity to one more grade level next year. We'll see how it goes with the sponsorship and what we can do, but it was a very worthwhile co-curricular.
Thanks to you, Ms. Brownlow and Ms. Allen, for
Yeah.
sponsoring
And Mrs.
this.
Esposito was the other sponsor. It's her daughter's birthday today, so she's yeah.
Thank you.
Understandable.
No, and I think it's so important. They had fifth graders visiting Hauser to collaborate with the sixth graders. It's so special and important. Like, how often do they get to go to the junior high and work with older students? And I really appreciate the time you guys spent. I know it's way more than we probably realize, so thank you.
Well, that's the good part.
Yeah.
You guys work with adults, I get to work with kids. So, wear ties, I'm sorry.
And these guys want to go home and experiment some more, so they're gonna take their projects and they're welcome to go home for the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
The rest of the report's always such a letdown after that, but yeah. The other thing I wanted to just share out with the board and with the public is we did have our formal results from our 5-year compliance review. So I have that all shared with you, that the compliance review is through the Regional Office of Education, and the review really looks at multiple components in terms of the overall school district functioning, governance and operations, general health and safety, personnel, instructional programming, services, and special education. So the auditors came back in late January, February, and visited every facility as part of the audit to conduct the safety checks. Review also was a thorough review of our website, our policies, personnel records, student records, evidence of fiscal management, and instructional program documents. And the review findings indicate, I should say more than suggest, that District 96 be awarded the fully recognized status, and also rated our program options, placement, and the assessment of our EL students, our English language learners, as exceptional. So well worth noting, and again, big thank you for the district office team and the principals and Margie, and I know Donna, and there was a lot of hands in this one. So thanks to that group, it was resulted in a very successful outcome as we expected, but it was still a lot of work to make sure all the information and evidence was available for the Regional Office of Education to inspect.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
They said there were 80 probes. What do they mean by a probe?
Like literally indicate like a one section, like so they would look at student records and make sure that you had all these specific things included in a student record as required. So those 80 would, under curriculum, they're actually state laws that say you must have curriculum in certain areas. So they would look for certain key areas.
They have like a checklist that they go
They had
through?
so I would call the probe their checklist.
Their checklist?
Yeah.
And did they leave those with you?
Yes, we have those back. We actually just got them released back to us. So if the board is interested in looking at all of those probes as an electronic document, I would be happy to share it.
It's an electronic document.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Then my other item under the superintendent's report is information about our early learners program. So as the board knows, we have early learners located at Hollywood School. So that's what we often refer to as our blended preschool. It's community students with special needs. We have 2 full classrooms, so 4 sections, an AM and a PM, another AM and a PM at Hollywood School. It is a wonderful program. Pam Shaw has been our leader in coordinating that program and bringing that to the district. We also have an early childhood special education class at Blythe. This year it's been an AM and a PM section. We anticipate next year just having an AM section. One of the things that we've talked about with Kim Hefner, the principal at Hollywood, Casimira Gorman, the principal at Blythe, and Pam, is that we really feel these programs belong together, that there's a collaborative opportunity certainly for the adults, but we feel there's really a collaborative opportunity for the students and an inclusive opportunity for them to spend time together. So our recommendation is that the Early Learners program move all to Blythe, so that there would be 3 classrooms at Blythe that would house our Early Learners program. And as part of that, then our recommendation is that we transfer the LADSI, what we call the CD program, that is currently at Blythe, over to Hollywood. And this really fits with some of the conversation that's been presented here tonight, is really making sure that we are certainly supporting what our students need first and foremost, and making most sense of our facility arrangements too, to really support student learning. So we believe that the housing, our students, I shouldn't say housing, but making sure their classrooms are in proximity to each other, that they have those opportunities. And we also know that Blythe offers perhaps one of our nicest outdoor learning spaces for our young students as well. I don't know if there's any discussion about that.
There's no discussion? Any discussion on this? Is that it?
Yeah,
then, Martha?
that's it. That's it.
Thank you. So let's then jump down to old business, the Ames enrollment recommendation. So at this point, is there a motion to approve the Ames enrollment recommendation, which is to add an additional 2nd grade section as presented?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion on this topic?
So I don't know how to start it exactly. So I know that the recommendation is for the 3 classrooms, which I fully support. If you could just go through the space one more time with me to make sure, because I know I fully support that I hate that there's 25 kids in a classroom. Fully support that, absolutely. But I just want to also make sure that Ames, as I've toured the different schools, Ames, it feels a little crowded at times. So you're adding, you're just increasing the enrollment. Do we have capacity there to make that a comfortable situation? I just want to make sure what the plans are and what we're...
Sure, happy to talk about that. We realized that to address this 2 groups of 25 and move that group of students into 2nd grade, that we really needed 1 more classroom. Mm-hmm. It's likely, as we know, in the long-range planning for Ames, that more than 1 classroom would give us sort of that chance to breathe a little bit, to spread out, and to look at our facilities overall. But one of the things we realized we could do this year is to take our multi-purpose room and split it. We actually met with our architect. She came and looked at the space. The space was at one point split. You can tell there are 2 doors, there are 2 sinks. There's actually a sort of a gap area where we believe it was probably a folding accordion wall at one point in time. So that seems to be a relatively easy fix, to build a wall. Her recommendation is that we actually drywall it, put as much soundproofing in it as possible.
Like a real soundproof
We
wall.
met with contractors this morning.
Especially with music.
What's that? With music?
Next to someone, it's,
Right. Right. So the idea is that we would split the multipurpose room in 2, and that we would have an art room and a music room, and that then, and Mr. Gierman's not here tonight, but we would move the kindergartners into the art room, and then one of the kindergarten rooms would become a 1st grade classroom. So we'd have 3 1st grades. We would have 3 of everything, as almost 3 sections of every grade level.
Yeah.
By acquiring that 1 extra space. The one difference is then the students will eat in the gymnasium. We've met with the custodial team and making sure that we can move tables, relatively easily in and out of the gymnasium. And again, I think this is a really good solution. It allows us to anticipate that we are going to have 3 sections of enrollment at every grade level at reasonable class sizes, be able to keep our incoming kindergartners. We do anticipate that there will be an addition at Ames in the coming year or 2, right? So that is yet to be determined, is the size of the addition and the timing of building that. So it is possible we could build as early as summer of 2018. It's also possible it could take till summer of 2019. We just, those things all remain to be seen as the Facility Advisory Committee is just now underway, looking at all the analysis from the architect. I'm happy to talk more about that.
So, just because I'm not an Ames parent, so I don't exactly know what the multi-purpose room was used for. It was used for music, because I would see the equipment.
Yeah.
Music and lunch. Were there other things during the day it was used for that are going to be displaced?
Not really.
Okay.
You know, there may have been an occasional idea. Yeah.
Occasionally, there would have been a quest classroom in there, and that will still be the case because we've planned the quest schedule
Around.
opposite the music schedule when we've needed to put a big room somewhere for that kind of instruction. So we're going to be looking at scheduling very carefully of both PE and other small group usage of that space, but it wasn't to the point where it would be detrimental to any of those programs. We could still operate like we did this year.
So the art teacher also goes to Blythe, the music teacher also goes to Blythe. The kindergarten section, that third section of kindergarten is just in AM, so there actually will be times when the art room is not in use, the music room is not in use, and the kindergarten room will not be in use in the afternoon. Those aren't perfect spaces to put another first grade or second, you know, because children in first through fifth need a classroom all day. But that does create opportunities for Quest, for other ancillary learning opportunities to have some flexibility within that very creative and careful building schedule.
Can you talk about the sizes of the art room versus what it might become, or kindergartners moving into the art room? Is that reasonably comparable to what a kindergarten might have now? I don't know.
Yeah, those are all nice sized classrooms. Our architect looked at the floor plan very carefully with us. There's nothing, I don't have the square footage in front of me, but there's really nothing that would say this is an undersized or oddly shaped room. They are, if you went in and walked through, you'd see these are general education classrooms that feel very typical and similar to other classrooms within the school district.
And I thank you for having Todd speak with the art and music teacher. That was a question that I had. Can you tell me what they said?
Yeah, so I know there had been a question of were we going to impact their curriculum?
Right. I mean, I don't want anybody's curriculum to be messed up, whether they're kindergarten or fifth grade. I want to make sure we're giving the same program. So we have sinks in those rooms, obviously, but can you tell me?
Right, and we're looking at additional storage for the art teacher. That was one of the things we were looking at with the contractor just this morning. So what I'm hearing from Mr. Gierman is certainly that the teachers are all very understanding of the opportunity to keep all of the Ames children at Ames for the coming year, and that they really don't feel that there's a detriment or an impact on their curriculum. We had looked at, as you know, looking at sort of having art or music as kind of a traveling teacher and going into the general education classrooms. That's a model that other districts do use. That's not a highly unusual, but it becomes less desirable. And this really became, to split the multi-purpose room really provided us this opportunity to really not have to look at changing the curriculum in that way, that there really is dedicated space for art and for music.
Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about this proposal?
Well, maybe just not particularly about Ames now, but can we just talk about class sizes in general? Like I know Ms. Doctor mentioned the central. So if you look at the enrollment report, there are definitely other pockets of high class sizes, most notably at Hollywood. So, I mean, it's nothing that we can resolve at the moment, but I do think it's something we need to have on our radar. We have a policy that makes a recommendation. It's certainly not a diehard rule, but it's a recommendation, and I think most of us on the board support small class sizes.
Right.
So I think because we're able to make a change at Ames, we're going to, but there's certain other areas where what do you do, and others, I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're looking at all of it.
Well, one thing is you can look at our class sizes through time, and all of that information is on the ISBE state report card. You can look at average class sizes, and so I think it goes back to 2002, and our enrollment on K through 5 has increased pretty steadily from 1983 until about 2010. And since about 2010, it's been more or less flat. It goes up and down a little bit, but the overall enrollment in K-5 has not changed in the last 5 or 6 years. And so you can see that in the state report card average class sizes. So we look at the average class sizes, for example, in K-3 from 2009, 2010, 2011, they were actually somewhat higher than they are now. And that's the big bulge that we have at Hauser right now. Those Hauser classes.
The 8th graders?
the Hauser classes, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes are the largest classes probably in the history of the district. The 8th grade class has got 225 kids or something like that.
Yeah.
It's enormous. What's that?
223.
223. So it's an enormous cohort, and that's
In
sort of
6th
moved through
grade,
the
yeah.
system right now, and that's going to start rolling off in Hauser next year. So this is a problem that has been with us for, I think, the last at least 6 or 7 years in this acute form. Unfortunately, it's not getting worse, other than this sort of occasional cases like we have at Ames, which obviously is a problem. But it's also a huge priority, as we know. This is our top priority for the facilities, and it has been. The strategic plan is actually resolving these patients.
Right,
So,
that's why I'm so happy that everybody agreed, we go ahead with the facilities committee, because this is not an easy task, but I love that you already started work, so I'm excited to hear it.
right.
So I just,
Go ahead.
oh no, finish if you
Well, I just want to say the other thing is I did look at one point at I think Ms. Doctor mentioned the sort of the number of kids coming into different grade cohorts, and I did look at that again at one point over again the last 15 years, and I think the biggest increase is from kindergarten to 1st grade. That's about a 10% increase on average. So if we have 150 kids, let's say in kindergarten, you might expect to see 15 more in 1st grade, 165. That's on average. And then the next biggest step is from 5th grade to 6th grade. And I don't know if that's people coming in from the Catholic schools or what exactly. I'm not sure exactly. But other than that, in the grades 2, 3, 4, 5, those tend to be more on the average of maybe a 2 or 3% increase. And again, that's historically, so I don't know if how that's going to be going forward, but that's been kind of what we averaged in recent history. So.
Jeff, the state report card, is that by school or just by the differently average?
That's by school. I've also looked at data from school by school, and it's somewhat consistent. There's obviously variability. I mean, so especially with Hollywood, for example. Hollywood is a tough school because if you have a lot of kids in Hollywood, what do you do? Do you send them to Central? That's a really big. They go across First Avenue.
Yeah.
So there's many complications in this whole topic, obviously. But did you want to say something else?
No, I was just going to say, I completely appreciate all of that, but just coming down to the actual, so at Central, is there a classroom if we needed to expand into 1st grade? I was like, 2nd grade is wrong, that's next year. Yeah, into 4, because I know the current 3rd grade had to be expanded into 4 sections at one point, and I know the current 6th grade that was 5th grade was expanded into 4 sections at one point. So are we, it happens. We know it happens. So that might be a possibility. Is there room? Do we have room at Central to do that?
I do see one possible way that would take some significant maneuvering, and that was really where we sort of put our heads together around Ames. Is we talked about in-house, we talked about mobile classrooms. I think those could be very unpopular in the community, but there are ideas like that is one. That is not a quick solution though. What I've learned is you purchase those or you rent those, you work way up front, you have to rework your foundation. So that is not we could do that for August of 2017. But I think if we had to, and I think there's an interesting question here that we know about, and that is our policy specifically says, and so I also want to assure families that we displaced from Ames to Central, our policy says that they have the opportunity to finish school 1st through 5th grade at the school that they have been assigned to. So I know already just today I was hearing from families that felt they were going to be quote unquote forced back to Ames. I think we will invite some families that, and I know, and just in talking to the principals, there are families where we know the transportation has been a bit of a hardship. So there are families that may welcome the opportunity to go back to Ames. There are other families that have now settled in at Central, and our policy says they stay. So we do have to look at all of our class sizes, and I know what Wendy Doctor shared. It's, I think, just a bit of a misrep. We didn't say that most students move in at 2nd grade. We said what we learn is students do move in at 2nd grade, and that last year at Ames there were 9 new students in 2nd grade, which is seems to be an outlier. Other years it was 3 and 4 students. So that is a bit of a surprise, perhaps. And one of the things when you look at the current 1st grade enrollments district-wide, what I realized and what we realized is that the importance of creating that extra room at Ames was about Ames students, but it was really a district-wide question because the dominant, once again, we could not displace more students over to Central because Central is already, really beyond that 20. So it's very important district-wide to get that extra space, and it's going to be very important district-wide to really look at space constraints overall.
So Martha, something that we've discussed, and it's been kind of a discussion item for years, is converting superintendent's office and the district office, I guess, into classroom space. So I would just, and that goes to your question, Linda, what are our options at Central? And outside of a mobile classroom, I didn't really hear anything other than moving students back.
Right, and it's always hard, right, to sort of share. I apologize for sort of sharing any half-baked ideas because that's really what they are at this point. Is the Facilities Advisory Committee is taking a very close and careful look, and one of the things that is out there is that the district office perhaps would be the easiest to relocate option to convert to student space. And I think, so that's...
Yeah, I would just like to, just throw my support behind a good, thorough look at that, and hoping that it can perhaps be part of the solution.
Randy, that was a topic of discussion at the last facility committee.
Yeah.
That specifically was, so. It's definitely on the menu of things that we have to consider.
And what I really appreciate is certainly this conversation and the board support and flexibility and open-mindedness, but I also really appreciate the partnership with DLA Architects. So I think this has, again, been one of those needed parts is a thoughtful and creative architect group that can come and say, I called her, I said, I need one room, like really soon, help me figure this out. And walking around Ames enough times and talking to the principal and looking at building schedules, it became clear that splitting this multi-purpose room was an answer for now. So
the other big issue that needs to be addressed is that over the past 4 years is we have this flexible boundary policy, but I've seen since the first year, it depends on what the trend is and what the parents are asking for. So we tend to, the first few years, it was very much the focus has been the neighborhood school principal, which, when it aligns with the principal that, of class size, it works, but it sometimes it doesn't. And I feel that the past few years, I want to say that we've been giving in to a lot of those parents, be it from Hollywood saying, or other schools saying, we don't care about the class size, will you please still, we want to be neighborhood schools, and we kind of follow that trend. And now, this is very different than where we've been the past few years. So we kind of, and this has been going on, this predates my term here, is that we kind of need to figure out where we stand with that, what's important, and stick to that, because we keep going back and forth.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, we don't have a class size policy. We override it, or
we've been overriding it as long as I used to.
Right, we've been overriding it for a decade.
so it's not an effective live
Well,
with it.
there is no policy. The policy is a recommendation. There's no policy.
Right. And what happens is when you're overriding the policy for instance kindergartens, then the trend, then you're completely setting the stage for the next few years. So you're stuck with that. So just something to think about.
Really, I think the reason why I think we have to do something at Ames, because that is the epicenter of the problem. Of the problem is that is where all of the excess enrollment is coming in. And it's because of that we then end up sending people to Central and to Blythe and here and there. That creates problems. So if we can solve the problem at Ames, then we are a good way along to solving the problem everywhere, I think. So that's...
But in the meantime, I agree. I think while I wish we could stick to our policy because I like the policy, I think we're in a situation where, due to space and facilities, I don't know, I feel like this policy, the way it's written, can cause some frustration in the community because we are never following it. So I think there needs to be some work done to the...
You're saying it's unclear.
It's unclear. So if I read this, I'm saying that it should be 23 kids. And you look at it and there's handfuls that are over 23 kids. So clearly, even though it's a recommendation, it's not, as a community member, you read it and you're like, this means nothing. So I feel like at least to extend it to explain based on enrollment and just so people will have some context, I think it could help. It certainly doesn't solve anything. I mean,
right. I mean, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think your point also is well taken that it would be impossible to strictly adhere to that recommendation.
Right, 'cause
we'd have to have a school that's twice as big as
once it hit 24,
because
the cost of creating another classroom. I mean,
even if costs weren't an issue, we'd still have to double the space because
right.
we got a bunch of classes that are very close to the limit.
Well, when Art was on the board, he used to say while he was on the board, the district grew the size of the school and we didn't add a school. We didn't build one. So there you go.
So Martha, you mentioned that you thought a mobile classroom would not be popular in our community. I'm not so sure that that's true. I think with a stated need and a real concern, our residents are certainly support education and want the best for the students. So I wouldn't just rule that out as a given.
I think that's something the Facilities Advisory Committee can take a look at. So Rich and Linda sit on the Facilities Advisory Committee as representatives of the board, along with our district office administration, our architect. And I feel like our first meeting last week was a lot of brainstorming and a lot of really good analysis. And there's a lot to consider. It's the demographic study, it's our policies, it's the neighborhood classes, it's the boundaries. So I think this is a good, thoughtful group.
It would be to be continued, basically.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Are there any more comments about this particular motion that we're considering tonight? Any more comments on that?
No, I just want to make one general statement that so many of us are parents in this district. We have children who we totally understand and have had children in all kinds of class sizes. So this is not something we take lightly by any means. And we're going to work through it. So.
All right. If there are no other comments, then Margie, will you please call the roll for the motion to approve an additional section at Ames for second grade for next year?
Mr. Brockman.
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy. Aye. Ms. Manchia.
Aye.
Mrs. Morello.
Aye.
Ms. Cliver.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Next item on the list, then we come back to the consent agenda. So if the board secretary would like to read the consent agenda, that would be appreciate that.
You're not going to stay for the rest and start signing.
And then there was
A lot of them really
And now we're back to our... All right, the consent agenda. Item 1, minutes of the previous meeting. 1A, minutes of the March 15th, 2017 closed session. B, minutes of the March 15th, 2017 regular business meeting. C, minutes of the April 5th, 2017 closed session 1. D, minutes of the April 5th, 2017 special meeting. And E, minutes of the April 5th, 2017 closed session 2. Item 2, the personnel report. Item 3, payables pre-list as of March 31st, 2017. Item 4, payables pre-list as of April 19th, 2017. Item 5, press issue 94, second reading and final adoption. 5A, policy 2:100, board member conflict of interest. Item 5B, policy 4:15, identity protection. C, policy 5:120, employee ethics, conduct, and conflict of interest. D, policy 5:230, maintaining student discipline. E, policy 5:300, schedules and employment year. F, policy 6:70, teaching about religions. And G, policy 7:100, health, eye, and dental examinations, immunizations, and exclusion of students, including the option to include optional additional services. We're choosing to include both options. 6, the IASB press issue 5-year policy review, the second reading and final adoption. 6A, policy 4:180, pandemic preparedness. B, policy 5:70, religious holidays. C, policy 5:80, court duty. D, policy 5:110, recognition for service. E, policy 5:140, solicitations by or from staff. F, policy 5:210 resignations, and G, policy 5:320 evaluation. Item 7, policies selected for board review. 7A, policy 4:20 fiscal goals and objectives, and item 8, disposal of surplus property.
Thanks, Linda. Are there any items that anyone would like to take off the consent agenda for further discussion?
How about policy 5:230, maintaining student discipline?
5320? Okay, we'll remove that from the consent agenda. Are there any other policies that anyone, or any other items that anyone would like removed? If there are no other items, then you said policy 5320, Randy? Is that what you said?
It's 5D, yeah, 5:230.
5320. Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda then with the exception of policy 5320 taken out?
5230.
5230.
Yeah,
5230.
sorry. So moved. Second.
Margie, please call the roll.
Ms. Clyber?
Aye.
Mrs. Borello?
Aye.
Ms. Mangia?
Aye.
Mr. Brockway?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. So then we turn to policy 5230, maintaining student discipline. Randy, you had some additional comments or discussion about that item?
Yes. I had a long dinner discussion tonight with my daughter and my wife, and that's why I was late. But and I was looking for an opportunity to talk about the issue, and maybe this is it. Student discipline and dress codes for the students, and I'm just wondering, Martha, how is this policy? Does it kind of encapsulate the issue of dress codes, and if
I really
so,
don't see that this policy addresses dress code.
No, this policy does not address dress code.
It talks about behavior that interferes with lessons or participation of fellow students, but not clothing.
And I guess I have to ask those more senior than I am here, if we don't have a formal dress code for Hauser. I guess I'm looking at you, Meryl or Pam.
They
There
have
is.
like guidelines, and I
In the
know there
handbook.
was just a conversation with the students this week during the lunch recess or advisory hour, just a reminder about
Appropriate dress.
Yeah, appropriate dress for school that doesn't distract your classmates during instructional time. So
Yeah.
that's what you're getting at, Randy. They talked about exposure of midriffs, and they talked about, appropriate shoulder coverage, three-finger rule for tank tops and things. So basic guidelines of appropriate coverage for middle school students, which is not an uncommon discussion at the school.
yeah, okay. I just,
Yeah, no, and like crude language and, that was the one
Yeah,
that just
okay.
reminded me. Like shirts with inappropriate language.
Right, I would hope it wouldn't be solely directed to our female population.
No,
because
no,
that's-
actually,
Yeah.
actually the metric was addressed to both males and females.
Okay.
I actually happened to hear that from the conversation. I was standing in the back.
I just, inappropriate dress in any, could lead to discipline issues or disciplinary type of behavior. And I just, I guess I just wanted a little clarification on that.
Right. I'd be more than happy to check with April and with Christy, and to look again at our parent handbook, just to bring that information forward.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question that I know you don't have the answer to, but just out of curiosity, does anybody track how often they send students home because of?
No, so what was told to, I was in the 6th grade presentation, I didn't hear what was said in the 7th or 8th grade, but I was in the 6th grade one, and what was told to the 6th graders is they'd be asked to either go put a jacket on if they had a jacket or a sweater in their locker, or to call them to have something brought to school, but not that we would send them.
Okay. So you're going to avoid, and I guess I agree with that, of education. I agree with you.
Are we still in open discussion for this vote, for this?
We're just discussing
Yes.
it, yes or no.
I got it, okay.
Are there
This
any other
policy is-
comments about the either this policy or
No, just to clarify, this policy
is not about dress code?
It's not about that, and it literally just has a language change, so there's no large change to this policy.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So is that, at this time, is there a motion to adopt the changes to policy 5230, maintaining student discipline?
Second.
Marjorie, please call the roll.
Mrs. Morello?
Aye.
Mr. Brockway?
Aye.
Ms. Mangio?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Next item is item G, Administrator Employment and Salary Recommendations. We have recommendations for salary increases for our 10 administrators, the 5 principals, the assistant principal, Ms. Brownlow, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Tufano, and Mr. Smith. At this time, is there a motion to approve the administrator employment and salary recommendations as presented?
Second.
Is there any discussion? The average, dollar-weighted average salary raise was 3.2%. So any further discussion? If not, then Margie, please call the roll.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye. Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mr. Brockway?
Aye.
Mrs. Morello?
Aye.
Ms. Mangio?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. At this point, we turn to item H, the superintendent's salary recommendation for 2017-2018. At this point, is there a motion to approve an increase in the superintendent's base salary by $7,000 for the 2017-2018 school year to a total of $182,000?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? This represents a 4% increase. If there's no further discussion, then Margie, please call the roll.
Ms. Mangio?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Mrs. Morello?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Brockway?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Next item is item I, the Riverside Educational Council. I don't see any representatives here, so we'll move on to board member comments.
Mary Jo.
Oh, sorry. No comments. So we next come to board member comments. Does anyone have any comments about any activities they witnessed or?
I went to the presentation last night by Carrie Goldman on the bullying and social conflict, and I thought it was fantastic. We filled up the library here, which was great, so it was a nice, small, intimate setting as opposed to the auditorium. But there was a good turnout for something like that.
45 to 50.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and it was. The presenter was fantastic, and she was very informative and engaging. Answered questions. And I think everybody walked away feeling like it was time well spent. So,
Was it mainly community members who attended, or did they bring their students?
there
as
was a
well?
few students, a handful of students, but I would say mainly community members. All the administration was here, so principals and Martha and Merrill, and so I felt like it was a strong showing on that end too, which was nice that people are invested in learning about this. So, and I really found Carrie Goldman to be great. Like she was really informative, and she was a true professional and completely prepared and answered questions like a pro and talked about some tough topics. So.
You know if they recorded her speaking? I was hoping-
Right. We did video it. She's also willing to release her slides. She does have an agreement. She's written a book, so she has an agreement with HarperCollins, and so she was very gracious and said yes, we could videotape. I still need to explore with her the sharing of the videotape.
Right.
Of course, we can share it. I just need to know, like, can I just put it on the website and make it widely available, or do I need to? Like, do you need to ask me specifically for a sort of for access?
Right.
So I just have to explore.
Because she was
that with
pretty
her.
clear about like her presentation, which was very long and well documented.
Yeah.
She said she would share the slides with anybody, but you would have to email and ask for them.
Yeah, she said that's the agreement with her publisher somehow, that it's she can't just say here
But
it
it
is.
was-
She has to say, like, if you ask me, I'll give it to you.
But it was really educational. Just I thought she was talking about, you know, the difference between normal social conflict, which is hard and painful and hard to watch your kids go through, versus true bullying. And what I took away is that, you know, the adult response needs to be very different in both situations. And, you know, like sometimes adults can make the situation worse, or by not getting involved make it worse. So I thought it was a really educational.
I wished I could have attended, and I've got a question for you, and you don't have to answer
I was
if you
going to
don't
say,
want to.
I am not Carrie
Putting
Goldman,
you
I
on
know
the
that.
spot. But did you get a sense from the presentation that the problems that we've recently been seeing in our district are different than other districts?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, the story she shared, I felt like she was talking about anywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, what I really appreciated what she was saying was talking about the social conflict and how it's normal and how it's incredibly painful for the adult and the child. And it, you know, and I think sometimes, you know, that pain feels like maybe it's bigger and something, you know, I think as parents, it's hard to navigate what's going on, because, you know, when your kid is struggling with something, it's hard to sometimes figure it out. So it was great. It was just a great, like, for as a parent listening to it, it was just a really, like a step-by-step of like, what's the difference? Like the power imbalance, is that there? Is that not there? And just to try to figure out, is it true just social conflict that your kids are gonna have to work through, or is there really a bullying situation, which is, you know, something that needs action? So,
Linda, is there a feeling that, or did anybody come away with the sense that what people are labeling bullying, what is normal social conflict?
You know, I certainly don't want to speak for anybody else or Carrie herself, but I mean, she was just very clear about that it's two separate things, and the action required is different in both situations. I don't think she was, you know, and then she also highlighted that, you know, a normal social conflict can spiral into bullying like that. So, so there's no like clear like, oh, this is only social conflict and my son will do this, you know, like
start somewhere.
Yes, but it was just I felt that it was very informative, and I thought she gave a lot of just good talking points and how to engage, and I thought it was great.
She talked a good amount about social media.
Yeah.
Social media has really only made this more complicated for as parents, as educators, and for children. You know, I mean,
but you know what I like that she came at it as like social media. It's not the devil. It's not evil. Like you know, like there are great things about it, and your kids are probably doing really great things on there, and not 90% of the time it's not a bad thing. So I actually came away with like a fresh perspective. Like okay, maybe this isn't as horrible as I thought it was, because she, you know, maybe we assume. I don't know. I just thought she had a really nice perspective on it. It wasn't just like, oh my gosh, you should never let your kids do it. You know, it was a really unexpected for me in that topic. It was great though, and I appreciate the district providing that.
Yeah, and I thank the board for it, and also our PTOs and PTAs hosted a reception, and that was really nice. So I feel like it was really a shared effort, which was very much appreciated.
I wanted to commend you, Martha, specifically for being a leader in this whole effort and making it a very important initiative.
It's important, absolutely. So thank you.
All right. Any other board member comments? If not, then we move on to the committee reports. First up is the policy committee. Linda.
No, we just approved all of the policies that we talked about, except for I believe there's one or two outlined that we're going to look into from the last policy committee. Nothing else to report except for if you have anything you want to talk about, let me know. But at our reorganization meeting, you might be letting somebody else know. So stay tuned. But in the meantime, please let me know.
Thanks, Linda. Next up is the finance committee. Rich, do you have any reports?
I do. Before we have a few items to discuss here, I'd just like to recognize Mr. Sellers, specifically with the hiring of Mr. Holmes as District 96's full-time Director of Finance. Mr. Sellers will have completed nearly 3 years fulfilling those duties. What makes Mr. Sellers' time with us especially unique is that he served District 96 in a part-time fashion while in his retirement. Mm-hmm. If I had to characterize Mr. Sellers' strongest traits that he brought to the district, they would be centered on his depth of knowledge with his respect to school finance and operations. Mr. Sellers assisted with the efforts of a new auditor for the district to ensure that all practices and financial procedures were meeting GASB standards. Mr. Sellers also assisted with the data crunching necessary for collective bargaining negotiations, and played an important role in their successful conclusion. Annually, Mr. Sellers led the district effort to capture only new revenue in the tax levy to protect the district finances. Regularly, Mr. Sellers mentors and directs a very capable and qualified staff, including Bill Radke, Pearl Cervantes, Linda Watson, Judy Steinke, and Nancy Schuneman. Mr. Sellers' reports on the budget, the levy, and all the financial matters were extremely detailed, informative, and educational. He worked hard to make sure the board understood the intricacies of the budget and the levy. Mr. Sellers always responded quickly, accurately, and in detail to any board members' questions about district finance and facilities. Finally, Mr. Sellers has agreed to continue fulfilling these responsibilities until the time Mr. Holmes begins his work to ensure the smooth transition of the district's finances. For all of this and more, as a board, we're grateful to you, Mr. Sellers, for your dedicated service to District 96. If I can embarrass you. It's a slide rule.
Thank you.
It's a box.
It's a red box.
Should I open it later?
That's
You
up
can
to
open
you.
it now.
Yeah, open it now.
I was hoping I would have the manual dexterity, and I think I do. Personalized gifts, so wonderful. Oh, sweet. Thank you so much. Oh, that's just gorgeous. And that has David Sellers on it.
It must be yours.
You don't have to sharpen a pencil anymore, so let's start writing it. It's true.
And I would just like to say that it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed myself working with this Board of Education and with staff, with seeing things go from the past to the present, and hopefully being able to say you have a great future ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would second Rich's comments as well. I've never encountered a subject as arcane and as school finance, but Mr. Sellers knows pretty much the entire encyclopedic spectrum of all these bizarre rules. So we really appreciate his leadership in that area.
I just want to echo what Rich and Jeff have said, and I want to thank you for coming on board and making the board look good. Made us look brilliant.
And David,
We're going around the room.
well, I'm gonna, yes, that's right. I think what was great for us as new board members was to have someone with such experience and someone who's been through a dozen different situations in their work experience. It's so helpful to have someone say, yeah, I saw this in another district, and it's sometimes hard to find someone with a broad depth of knowledge. So thank you for your advice and for explaining things clearly, and CPI is no longer a mystery, so thank you for that.
I think it's all been said. Thank you.
Now, after all that nice stuff, do you have anything else to report on here before we
I
get
don't
to
have
new
anything
business?
other than what's later in the agenda.
Okay, very good.
All right, thanks, Rich. Next item is the Education Committee. Sherry.
And we had a presentation from Sarah's Inn, kind of talking us through some of their offerings and possibly an SEL component in our curriculum. We also had a presentation from Ms. Brownlow about the Quest Advanced Learning Committee, where they've been, where they're going, and kind of a timeline for their progress. Also, we heard from the ELA team about the ELA adoption that was just recently recommended and happened, and we're excited to see where that takes us. So.
Great, thanks, Sherry. Next item then is the ELA adoption that Sherry just mentioned.
There it goes. Segue.
Is there a motion to approve the ELA, new ELA adoption curriculum as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion of this adoption recommendation? If not, then Margie, you please call the roll.
Mrs. Morello? Aye. Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Regan.
Aye.
Ms. Mangia.
Aye.
Mr. Brockway.
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. And then skip to item 3, to waive the limitation of administrative costs. Is there a motion to approve the resolution to waive the limitation of administrative cost as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion of this topic? If there's no discussion, then Margie, please call the roll.
Mr. Regan.
Aye.
Ms. Mangia.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber.
Aye.
Mr. Brockway.
Aye.
Ms. Morello.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Then we come to the last item, which is new business. So there's only one item on the new business, which is the fiscal year 2017-2018 first draft of the budget from Mr. Sellers. So, Mr. Sellers, I hear you have some comments that you'd like to make on this.
Yes, looks like I'm the only thing separating the meeting from its conclusion.
I thought that.
Share here for a second. Where are we in the budget development process? So I'll try and make this short, I guess is what I'm trying to say. These are documents that have been prepared in the past, and the purpose of all of this paper and all the analysis in creating a reference document for your use at any time is to establish budget guidelines. And that's done in January. So what happens between January and now? Well, the marching orders go to the principals, to the administration to develop their budgets and submit what they want to spend and why, with statements of justification, using zero-based budgeting for all capital outlay categories, and making their proposals with the hope that it will be approved at the district office level and then forwarded for board consideration. So we're really at that point when all of that has been assembled and incorporated into what is being termed a preliminary draft. The preliminary draft is, as of April, there are still many unknowns, both on the revenues and expenditures side, primarily on the revenue side, finalizing of property taxes and corporate personal property replacement, grants. There are a number of things that are yet to be finalized. On the expenditure side, salaries and benefits are still in flux. Your final staffing for 17-18 is yet to be developed. But in purchase services and supplies and materials and capital outlay and dues and fees, those are the categories primarily that we're asking administrators to articulate what needs you have. So the number one takeaway, you might recall me saying the same type of thing last year, is that we want to start school in an orderly fashion with all of the equipment having been ordered, and sometimes equipment involves significant lead times. So the budget, preliminary budget materials include the capital outlay list. So this is April at the May Committee of the Whole meeting and at the May regular board meeting. We'll be revisiting this list and asking you to email to the district office, to me or to Martha, any questions about the capital outlay list. I'm including capital outlay and software. And what's wonderfully convenient is that Mr. Tufano is here and will be for the COW and the next meeting. And a lot of the capital outlay and software requests are specific to the discussions that go on with the board's technology committee and involving all the technology initiatives. So from a broader perspective, when the financial projections are developed that are incorporated into this document, I have always looked at this school district's size as warranting over $400,000 a year in new and replacement equipment, generally speaking, based upon the size of the district, and the magnitude of your inventory, and past spending, and the kinds of proposals that are being brought forward. The total dollar amount for capital outlay that's being proposed is $380,000. And so from a financial parameters perspective, I think this is an affordable presentation of new and replacement equipment. And then I have asked Mr. Tufano, and he's done some adjusting downwards of software. We're revisiting all of our contracts with software vendors and just seeing if we can tighten the budget, make it a little more close to what we actually expect as essentially needed. So those are still works in progress. But you know, the most important thing is please review the capital outlay list, ask questions. Our intention at this point, because these have been vetted at the district office level, would be to proceed with a recommendation that you approve these, and then we move forward, and by the end of May, begin cutting purchase orders to vendors, so that for the opening of school, we have everything delivered. And I'm sure Mr. Holmes would appreciate that, you know, that orderliness, because that's really something that has to happen every school year. The Board of Education has to, in May, give the administration authority to move things forward.
David, first of all, I want to commend you on having the capital outlay list. It's in one place, and I don't think we had anything like that before you came. And then my second question, and I'm not expecting a big, long answer, is how does the capital outlay list fit with the work of the facilities committee and the facilities review?
It has absolutely nothing to do with it, because the capital outlay list is strictly the educational fund. Okay. And when we ask principals and other administrators to submit new and replacement equipment requests, educational fund, if it's in the operations and maintenance fund, it's usually affixed to the building. It's part of the building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, those type of systems. And when you're talking about the facilities master planning efforts, those are more related to remodeling or
More to real property, right? More to
Right.
real property, and then the capital outlay is.
Those are in two other categories. I would say look at your operations and maintenance fund and look at your capital projects fund. Those are the resources for the work of the facilities master planning process.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
And then I would like to mention, just in conclusion, that there was questions about salaries, and I did send this as an addendum. I don't need to go through it now, but I would like...
Before we get to that, can I make you're moving
Sure.
on to the next topic, just want to make a comment about the capital outlays. Obviously, the numbers seem reasonable, but I think it's important that the administration, and it sounds like you're doing that with the software and so forth, really go through that with a fine-tooth comb and make sure there's nothing in there that's sort of really unnecessary. Everything should be focused on education or making the staff more efficient. And if something's not in that category, you know, it shouldn't be there. There should be nothing in there that's like, well, we really need such a thing. You know, so I think if you know, it sounds like you're doing that right now, which is great. I think it's very important that we don't have things that are like nice to have but not really essential.
We do actually have 3 terms for prioritization of capital outlay requests. The highest is, the word is essential, and the next one is priority 1, and the next is priority 2. So we do look at that, and we are interested in making sure that we have internal communications about what is really essential, and what, you know, if we were in a financially difficult situation, what could get cut, that kind of a thing. But I think the $380,000 as proposed from a financial planning perspective, I think that's a pretty good number for you to settle on.
Do you want us to email you our comments on the capital outlay, or is that what you prefer, rather than having a discussion right now?
You could email Martha and CC me, or vice versa.
Right, that'd be great.
I have a question about the software renewals. I see terms renewals and carryovers, and there's a few carryovers that we don't currently have, like a learning management system and student data assessment. Can you talk about those for a minute? Are those possibilities when it says carryover?
Those items are softwares or software as a service that we've been looking at. We'd hoped to implement this year. We've gone through, for instance, on the data management system, we've gone through an extensive evaluation process, but we hadn't come to a decision. But we wanted a budget for the current year. And since we didn't actually select a data management system, we're just carrying it over because we're still looking to make a decision on that.
And then about the new items, where it says new, I'm assuming that's yet to be determined if they're necessary. Can you talk about your classifications?
Yeah, the new was just, there were some new initiatives. I think a couple of the new items was the teacher evaluation system platform. That was a new item, and the other one was a web hosting platform, which would replace our existing one, more of a content management solution. And those were the two key new ones.
Okay.
In breaking down the software items, we did talk about it this week at our cabinet meeting. There are, I broke it down for cabinet members as there's software that are really a part of district operations, like our student information system. This is it's one of our larger categories just for district operations. Then there's technology operations, if you want to break out that. There's curriculum instruction. There's some items that are a combination of curriculum and instruction and instructional technology, and there's special education stuff. So we're
You've got
looking
in
through
tech
those.
and CNI and ops, so that's how we can find
Exactly.
the department. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. So anything that's a recurring cost, like software, it's like $300,000 a year. It's really important that we
Really important.
really go through it and say we absolutely need this, because recurring costs are the things that are really, always the problem.
Exactly, and as the director of that area, I mean, I oversee the budget, but the actual services that we're renewing aren't necessarily directly used, or we manage them. But in terms of usage, we work with the different areas to determine, is this something that you still need for the coming year? Great, thank you.
I'd like to put out a general comment to the board just to sort of get everybody's disposition on this. And as I look at David's reports here, specifically I'm on page 6. And revenues since 2013 have been relatively flat. However, expenses have increased by upwards of 5%, sometimes 7% each of those years. And while we haven't overspent our revenues each year, we're definitely eroding the excess funds each year. And I guess I'd just like to understand from the rest of the board how everyone feels about that.
I think we need to keep it under control. Make sure we're exactly what our strategic plan said, which is maintaining our strength. So I think we need to look carefully.
I think this is a serious problem because if you look at, as Rich said, our revenues from 2014-15 to projected next year are projected to grow up by a total of 2.5%. Total over those 4 years, so less than 0.6% a year. And our expenses have been growing, 5% a year. And so the net effect of that, or at least for the last year and this year and next year, the net effect of that is that we were running, assuming we were spending capital of $1.2 million, which Mr. Sellers has going forward, if we've been spending that in the past, we had an excess of revenues over expenditures of, well over $3 million, $3.5 million for 4 years in a row. This year it's down to, last year is down to less than $3 million if we had spent that amount. This year it's going to be 1.7, or that's the projection. Next year is looking like it's like $500,000. So we've gone from a very healthy surplus in 3 years to a situation where we're now getting close to being, not deficit spending, but we're in that ballpark now. So I do think this is something we definitely have to have a serious conversation about as a board, is how we want to
have to figure out,
continue this trajectory.
you have to figure out what the tools you're going to use to sort of evaluate the return on your expenditures. I mean, we made decisions, and are we getting a return on them? And again, there are apparently sophisticated ROI calculations, and I don't have the answers, but you've got to kind of have a framework for the analysis, and I don't know what that is.
Right.
You know, we have a goal, but we don't have action plans or strategies. You know, just the only one is that when it gets to a certain point, you're just going to have to do a financial plan, but you want to keep it from getting to that point. But I mean, everybody should understand that the tax system isn't kind of set up, the property tax system with all the caps to eventually get you in that anyway.
I would like to just page through this, because this is salaries is a very important part of well, it is the
What are we at, 70%?
Property taxes and salaries are the two financial factors that drive your financial condition. And I would like to have this in the conversation. First of all, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you are. So the first page, I'm right now forecasting that we're going to be pretty close budget to actual. We are going to go over budget on salaries, but in total expenditures, I'm forecasting a 1% variance. So I think our budget to actual will be fairly close. Last year we were at 1.57% unfavorable. On the next page and the following page, what this is showing is number crunching using our DCR software, all of the payroll transactions. Well, this is taking 7,000 payroll transactions year to date, and then breaking them into job classification, and then saying, well, if this is what we've accumulated year to date, where does this point to as far as how we're going to end this year? And I just did this today, and the previous time I did it was about a month ago, and the picture has improved by $118,000. So, you know, it's not easy to make a prediction as to what the conclusion will be when you're only, say, 2/3 through the year. When you're getting to 3/4 or 5/6 of the way through the year, it gets to be easy to predict what the year will end. And then finally, so I guess what I'm saying is that the preliminary budget that was just distributed based upon data analyzed today is $118,000 better than what had been distributed. And then finally, I like to run through this exercise to see, how reliable or how trustworthy is a financial projection. A financial projection is a plan in and of itself over a number of years into the future, but it is always subject to change. So in February of 2015, the forecast was $14.732 million for 2017-18 next year. Well, now the forecast is for $16,058,000, an increase of $1,326,743. So why was I so wrong in February of 2015? Well, it's really in growth in FTE, and we talked about that. You have additional people, and I think I also probably overestimated to some degree the value of attrition, because you do save money whenever people retire. We haven't had much retirement activity in the last 3 years. And but here under where it says all staff and then faculty FTE, we've grown by 12.2 positions all staff and 15.8 when you just look at faculty. And faculty are your expensive positions. So growth in the numbers of people, that's probably, or rather, it is flat out unsustainable at this level of growth. And your collective bargaining process, I think we probably had an issue come up that I've mentioned briefly, and I'll mention it again. When you collectively bargain to have a 1% floor, and then the CPI comes in at 0.7 and 0.8, that's a problem. Your floor is too high. And so there's other things in the collective bargaining setting that you'll need to contemplate for the next contract conclusion. So focusing on your collective bargaining agreement and curtailing growth in the numbers of people are important things to consider. But I also wanted to look at with you, what is the end point? Well, from the standpoint of where do you wind up after you've grown so much in relation to 48 other comparable school districts? Well, you're 1.81% above the state average, and you're at the 52nd percentile.
That was
But
back
that's
in
14, 15. That is not currently our rate.
Very different.
Right, 14, 15.
That's not now.
That was
Well, now I think we're probably between 2 and 3% above the state average.
I
just
don't
added
think so.
$2.5 million between the last 3 years. We've increased our payroll by $2.5 million, maybe $2.4 million, because you said it's a little bit off, but still, that's a huge increase.
Right, well, we just concluded the 2015-16 audit. We came in at 13,500 something. And if you take the state average, increase it by $300 or $500, you're talking about an increase of between 2 and 3.5%. Or rather, this district will be 2.5 to 3.5% above the state average with the conclusion of the 15-16 and comparisons of financial. In other words, you're still less than 5% above the state average in spending per pupil. And that coincides with these lovely charts that I've shown you all these years. When we go to, I think as Mr. Regan remembered, it's page 19. I like to focus on per capita tuition charge. And so what I'm trying to say is, looking at your external environment, look at the school districts that you compare yourselves to, even at this seemingly strong rate of growth, where have you ended up? I have to look at the table of contents. Anyway, you know the chart that I'm talking about. You're in the 58th percentile among the 48th school districts. Bottom line is that...
When was that as of? That's as of what year?
14, 15.
So that was before we had this massive increase in spending.
That's
so I'm
not
not sure that's
relevant right now.
relevant to this year or next year.
And 58th percentile on what? Average cost per student?
Yes,
Okay.
per capita tuition charge. The current increase from 14-15 to 15-16 is 4.9%, and the state is going to grow also. So just that'll be on your radar screen to examine in the future. If the school district is 5% above the state average in spending per pupil, you're not really getting out of line with spending per pupil, because that includes downstate. Where I'm going to retire is Johnson County, where they have 12,000 people in the entire county. And they don't pay their teachers all that well down there. So those school districts throughout the entire state are included in that average spending per pupil.
Do you know, but again, I don't want to get into a long discussion on this, but out of curiosity, do you know what districts or what factors drive that state average? Because
well, it's an average of 863 school districts. You know, that's the number of school districts in the state of Illinois.
Does it include the city of Chicago?
No. Well, no. Yeah, the city of Chicago is one of the 863.
Can you tell me, you probably don't have the statistic on hand, but what proportion of those would be in deficit spending?
I don't have
I don't
the answer
want to
to that
be like
question.
everybody else if they're performing
60%.
poorly. Right, and that's what's important, is we don't want to be in a position
I think that information that you shared, David, is important for us to have for context.
Yeah.
Right.
But that doesn't remove what this board's position should be,
That's
which
right.
originally what I brought up is we got to decide as a board how we want this to go and how we want to advise Martha and David and Mr. Holmes going forward. And my personal position is that I'm uncomfortable with that trajectory.
Yes.
But I'm one board member of 7. We have to make that decision soon, I think.
Well, keep in mind that your trajectory also applies to your cumulative fund balance. In February of 2015, I predicted you'd have 22.6 million in the bank in 2017-18. You're on track to have $28.7 million in the bank. A
But our
growth in
expenses
cumulative reserves
will-
of $6 million.
I think what we're interested in is relationship to the growth of our expenses, which is going to eat away at that number. And I know you're aware of
Right,
that.
but you're starting from a very high
I realize that,
level.
but it's not a good trajectory.
One of the concerns I have is we've been averaging $800,000 a year increase in salaries for the last 3 years, roughly. And next year, I think you're saying, I don't know, 700,000 or something like that, maybe 600,000. The year after that, you have it dropping down to 400,000, which is a big drop. So I guess my question is, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get to that? And that, even with
Well,
that,
I answered that a
You
minute
answered
ago.
that, so you're saying
You have to decrease your rate of growth in the numbers of staff, and you have to collectively
so yes, we
bargain
have
to
to,
bring
we
that
have to
down.
keep a close eye on staffing and the collective bargaining.
And the
has to be
CBA.
looked carefully at.
Those are the two things you need to focus on in order to achieve sustainability. You have to level off your staffing, but all I'm saying is that also we're keep in mind that at the end of the day, when you've accomplished that goal, you will be an average school district as far as spending per pupil.
Well, if spending were the only indicator for student growth and success.
I was going to echo
Because
that.
I will just echo, we have amazing teachers, and I would never want to not hire the best people that we have, but there are a variety of factors that come into play.
I totally agree with that
Professional
statement.
development of
Thank you.
teachers is a very attractive thing for bringing people into your organization. Those are great things that the board has accomplished.
They definitely are, and my comments don't diminish that in any way, but these are conversations that a board has to have before it becomes a critical situation. That's all I'm suggesting.
We don't want to lose good people. We want to keep the people
Well,
that we have.
Sort of earlier today, we were talking about class size. Again, if you want to keep class sizes low in a era of increasing enrollment, you're going to add the staff. So that's the section that we're adding at Ames. Are we hiring a teacher for it? Because there are others, so again, maybe it's taking a hard look at the class size policy and work with aides rather than.
And I'd be surprised if your enrollments grew. Right now, the CASARTA projection is for enrollments to actually decrease a little, level off. According to those projections, you'll be about the same over the next 5 years as you are right now. So that's a good place to be.
So just to sort of follow up on Rich's point, is there a consensus on the board that this is something that we have to be looking at these numbers? We are moving from a very healthy situation to one that is much less healthy just in this 3 years. Even though we might be at the state average, it's still much less fiscally healthy. Is there a consensus of the board that this is a concern that we really have to look carefully at going forward, and using the 2 recommendations, for example, that Mr. Sellers noted, which is hiring new staff and obviously contract negotiations, which we only will be coming up in a year, I guess. Do we have that?
Yeah, I think so. I would just ask a question to you, Jeff. What resulted in our surplus? It wasn't certainly due to increasing property taxes. It probably goes back to a referendum, right?
Right.
And so was that surplus artificial in the sense that there was a referendum passed?
Right.
And
Back in 2003, is that right? 2000, was that right? 2003?
I think it was
That's
4.
referendum?
And then there was
I forgot that's last year, I think.
the most recent capital expenditures, not in the last year or two, but that was on borrowed money, I believe.
Some of it was, and some of it came directly from surplus, or fund balance, right?
Right, I think Mr. Sellers has allocated enough money to cover the entire debt, right? Is that, you set that aside in the debt service fund, right? So we are essentially net debt-free, is that right?
Final year, there will be a kick-in.
Okay.
Additional, probably $500,000.
But essentially, most of the debt, whatever
Most of it.
is covered.
We started at about $8 million, and the reason why I left $500,000 as additional contributions because we don't know what the interest earnings on that debt will be over that time. If the interest earnings are favorable, then maybe that $500,000 will go away, but I doubt it.
I guess my point was, nobody's going to vote for property tax increases, and how do you control expenses, salary, 3%, 2%, 3%, 4%. It's not an easy situation.
No, it's definitely very difficult.
Very difficult situation, and
Figure out-
there may be a referendum. I'm not as the you keep all your options open, as they say in our.
I think there needs to be, I agree with you guys, what you're saying as far as we're concerned. I think that there needs to be kind of a paradigm shift, starting at the top. We were, a lot of people were accustomed to the culture. We were a very financially well-to-do district, and that we no longer are that district. We're not as bad as some, but we're not as good as where we need to be, and we kind of need to communicate this change of mentality through the entire district, through principals, through staff members, and I think that there was a general understanding. We started that process in the last collective bargaining, but to continue that discussion, because you're right, Jeff, I was just looking at this, some of the facility spending, I'm like, oh, come on, please. We haven't really communicated that down through the ranks, and we need to change that. We may, as far as losing staff and things like that, I'm not concerned about that, because most districts are going through what we're going through. And we may have to, well, you guys, not me, we'll have to make some unpopular decisions, but it's the way it's gonna have to go.
But you have the tools to do it.
You just,
in terms of, we've had the best district office staff we've ever had.
But, no, I agree, and that's actually a good thing. We have actually very good staff
And
in
good
place
board,
coming
and a
on.
good board.
So basically, I think, we should have the resources to make good decisions, but we will have to make decisions, obviously.
And you have to have some framework to figure out how you do it. I would imagine that IT expenses have probably grown dramatically here, just because we set up a more of a department than we never have too.
Oh, I agree. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And that's going to continue to grow because technology.
Right, we have like $300,000 in software renewals. We were talking about that earlier. I'm sure 20 years ago we had $0, dollars. I'm saying it's like one of those things that just is a new cost that a lot of it's necessary, I'm sure. We have to make sure that we don't spend any that's unnecessary.
The only comment I want to make, and just to balance this out, I completely agree. I'm agree that we need to. The trajectory is not, it's a clear change from 10 years ago. But if we go back to a few years ago when we had a $4 million surplus, I don't think things were being run so well. And I'm not saying it is directly related to what we were expending, but we had a lot of issues 4 years ago that we've been climbing out of, and maybe increasing staffing and administrative because of that. So I just want to
You're saying the money that was spent was not just squandered. It was targeted.
Right, and maybe 4 years ago more money should have been spent to to prevent things that maybe happened. I don't know. I'm just saying, just on the other side, like I agree. Like I do not want to be deficit spending. I get that. I
And some of
completely
this is
agree.
the
We need to be
state,
looking
you know,
at all the things
we
we've
have
been saying,
new
but just
things we
to
have
put
to
it in
follow.
perspective.
Well,
a little bit.
exactly. There's more requirements, but, you know, but you look at 4 years ago, we weren't even convinced that we needed a curriculum director and a finance person.
Right.
But I certainly don't regret that decision. But I
Right.
mean, we basically had Dr. Lamberson, and that was it. So I think
That's what I'm saying. So,
Right.
so if we
So-
look at where we were 4 years ago,
Right, these are good choices.
we've spent a lot of money on things that are probably, you know, very
Worthwhile.
beneficial long run.
yeah, but we're going to apparently
I
have
mean,
to.
but yes, moving forward, we will have to make the decisions because you cannot keep doing that.
just
And
not
I
sustainable.
completely agree with
Well,
that.
the big ticket items that keep coming up with staffing is like LADSI, the balance of LADSI and the support staff, because I think our first year we hired, 10 psychologists, social workers. I don't know, I'm not in the classroom, I'm not sure from administrative level what we needed. And I know that it was presented to us at the time is we're saving money. That was very short-sighted because, as we know, staffing along with benefits, along with increases, subsequently goes up to reevaluate the comprehensive special ed support plan to see what makes sense in that scenario.
And I think one of the things that was also influenced the decision was that you'd be able to deliver the services to students without the delay of scheduling and getting LADSI time. But part of it was also that we were going to save money.
Right.
But some of it was just delivery of service. And again, that has to be reevaluated.
Right.
So good luck.
So it sounds like there's a consensus.
Good luck, guys.
Up to you guys.
So now that we have a leader in place, I think this is something,
Right, and
it's
so
a
that's
great
something-
conversation to have and to
Exactly.
shape.
Agreed.
No,
And Martha had nothing to do with the past budgets, obviously, but going forward, obviously, it's.
And I appreciate the trajectory comment, and as I try to look back into the recent past, and I shared that I know with some of you, I think we did add things. I think we were perhaps making up for some lost time or lost services or services that really weren't at sort of where a very strong school district needed to be. Do I see that trajectory continuing as I look around with a sort of a wish list of what other personnel needs? I don't see a lot of that. I do think we need to make these adjustments around class size, and I know we're going to look at the class size at Hauser's. You know, we have some classes with 30 plus students in them, some sections, right? So we said we're going to look at that this year, actually run actual schedules. Might there be some, I don't think significant personnel recommendations, but might there be some additional personnel recommendations? I think perhaps. So again, I think it's all of this. It's the class size, it's the personnel, it's the long range outlook. But I think my understanding is the supports that were needed for RTI, the supports that were needed for special education, the supports that were needed for advanced learning, you know, so those, for EL students, those were, I think, very valued decisions. But I do get that sense we were making up for some things that weren't in place
Yeah,
before.
we didn't have an RTI program 4 years ago, as far as we didn't have it.
I mean, Hauser's going to lose, is it almost 50 students next year? Is that right?
Yeah.
I think
Is
so,
that right?
yeah.
So, I mean, we should, just because of the outgoing class is so large, and the incoming class is smaller,
Yeah,
so
fifth is important.
that should take care of itself to some degree, hopefully.
Right, some of it, my understanding is the sections in our recommendation to kind of expand services for advanced learning, and so some of it is an unevenness that happens in a middle school schedule, but to be able to take a careful and close look at that, and that was one of the things I know I talked with one of the parents about too, is sort of what I would call instructional design, is that we have some supports and services and interventions that I think are very valuable. They were put in place very intentionally by this board and by the administration because they are good for kids. So I've appreciated that too, you know, that there's, to be very thoughtful, to be very, you know, cost conscious, but to realize that there are those high impact strategies and programs and services.
And don't ignore looking at activity fees.
What's that?
Don't ignore looking at activity fees.
The stipends.
Well, not the stipends, but the whole, you know, the whole list of, and you're doing a great job looking, you know, to get partnerships, and at the very least, that frees up our principals from running, investing time there rather than instruction.
So I anticipate this to be an ongoing conversation. We'll have to be monitoring this very carefully going forward, obviously, as necessary. So I don't know if we're going to come up with the answers tonight, but definitely is something we have to care about. Are there any other comments on this topic? If not, then thanks, Mr. Sellers, for the presentation. And we move on to second public comment. If there's any public comment. If there's no public comment, then future meeting is on May 2nd, is 2017. It's the biennial organizational meeting at 7 p.m. in Hauser. I assume you guys are all going to be here. The board members will be here. So.
Yeah.
Good.
You need a quorum of us.
Yeah.
You need a quorum of us
Should we
to.
remind
have a
them it's a
little celebration.
Tuesday?
Yeah, we have.
Should we remind the public it's a Tuesday instead
It's a
of
Tuesday,
Wednesday?
not a Wednesday, 7 p.m. So at that point, we'll welcome the new board members. I did have was thinking a little bit about, does it make sense to, I'm not sure if the new members want this, but if they do want it, would it make sense to maybe assign them mentors with the current board members? We could sort of do it just randomly and say if the new board member wants to have a mentor, just in case, like, I understand what's this about, what the budget, or they can go call someone up and not have to, like,
As
feel
long as
bad
they go
about it.
through training first, certainly.
So is that something you interested in that idea? So I mean, just everything.
Give them my printout.
I think it's a really great idea
Yeah.
because it sort of creates that stability and continuity
That's
that
right.
we've been striving for the last 2 years.
Right.
So this sort of nurtures it along.
So if the new board members, we can talk to them on the 2nd of May if they're interested, then we could just say,
Yeah, and I nominate Sherry.
Oh, thanks. Because I have nothing to do.
I was gonna say Mary Rose can handle it. She's got all three of you.
I'm not moving forward with you guys. It's been fun, but enough,
So with that,
enough is
then,
enough.
if there's no further business, then the meeting's adjourned.